students and the others since then, what the Vietnam students gave us that they didn't have was very robust law that protects the right of students and others to express their viewpoints in these public places without any sort of government censorship. And what they're doing is implementing these laws that are clearly unconstitutional by any reasonable measure, in the hopes that we will not challenge them, that they can out-litigate us, that they can keep us sort of, kind of confused and quiet and reactive. So, my hope from, conferences like this, and as we continue to have conversations, is that we can, take a page out of the ADL's book, right? Like, we have to use these laws, right? We have to use these laws. We have to challenge these policies. University of Michigan just passed a new facilities policy that basically bans protests, and we have legal tools that we can deal with to challenge that. And once we get some victories behind us legally, right? And we got to move fast, right? Because the encampments are not going to stop. These students are going to go back. They're going to start doing this again. Once we get some legal victories, I think we're going to find we don't have to be so much on the defensive with these things. We have tools. We just have to sort of use them and work together and use the resources we have, and we can really break them down as long as we have a healthy skepticism of the law as well, because the law is the very thing that's creating these distinctions in the first place. I don't really have anything else to say.
Thank you. A question for anyone who wants to grab it, and I know I heard this question a few times.
Can I just first?
Go ahead, sorry.
Hello? Yeah. I want everybody to write down the Global Dictionary and Israel and Google it. The Ministry of Strategy of Israel, in 2009, I think, was the renewed version, put out, it's 100 pages, the Global Dictionary. And you open it up, and it's a manual that the Ministry of Strategy uses when their students are traveling to the US, whatever, to tell them talking points on everything you can think of. And it's psychology, it's words, it's, tell them you understand the pain of the Palestinians, tell them you da-da-da, and then boom. It's a dictionary that we need to create, by the way. It's amazing. It's amazing. You just open the page, and if they look it up, the Global Dictionary, and just put Israel, and you'll find it. It was supposed to be a secret and got leaked a few years ago, and all hell broke loose when it did. And still people, in our community, we don't know it. Study it, and let's create the same dictionary.
The other point is they are using these definitions as well, and the changing definitions to attack folks in the workplace. How many people got fired, many people lost their jobs over social media posts. But if again, a question for anybody, I think it's more like a technical question. Can I get fired for posting something on social media from my private employer? Because this was asked me many times.
You can get fired for anything until you challenge it. You can get fired for anything until you challenge it. But, first we really need to work together, like what he was talking about, the class action suits or consolidating cases. I mean, as an example, in the Blinken kibbutz that was taken down, now they are rallying in cars. And the troopers are stopping cars for going too slow, for whatever. And I don't know how many cases they have, but a lot. So Samer Borgan, who's an attorney in DC, consolidated the cases together and included the chief of police and the lieutenant, and it's become this whole circus that they're really going nuts with. We need to strategize. As many of you have heard, remember CARE was going to have a banquet, they closed it down. ADC's event was closed down, no, not ADC, sorry, US CPR,
US campaign.
The Arab American Foundation, that's not even political, it's all cultural. They closed it down. And when Abed and I were on a call with the Department of Justice, and I said, well, there's a pattern here. And they said, for discrimination, you have to show a pattern. And they said, no, the pattern has to be the same hotel doing the same thing over and over. But the pattern is that people from the outside are calling in
Yes.
and intimidating and fear-mongering and calling the word anti-Semitism. That's the pattern, and we need to organize together so some of the organizations have struggled to find representation because they can't afford it, and like you said, they just want to, So, to the question, can you be fired? Yeah, you can be fired. Again, another story. My daughter works at a place called The Door in New York. They have 5,000 homeless young adults. And early on, there's an artist called Malak Matar. She's from Gaza. And my daughter said, can you introduce me to her? Because I want to introduce her to these young African-American and brown kids to let them know the similarities of Gaza and whatever. So anyway, she introduces them. This is before Saif al-Quds, before that war, whatever you want to call it. And so they meet this girl, and they're all excited that they know this girl from Palestine now. Okay, so then the Saif al-Quds happens, and these young kids that were awakened put something on Instagram. So my daughter's boss calls her and says, Dina, are you aware what your kids did? And she said, what kids? Look on Instagram. So she looks on Instagram, and these kids put, so you want to blame Hamas, huh? And then they educate. And so she said, okay, I looked at it, and she said, well, they need to take it down. And she said, wait a minute, we created this group to give them a voice, and now they have a voice, and I'm not about to shut it down. And they said, okay, well, I'll get back to you. So then they get back to her, and they said, well, they violated the marketing and the communication protocol of the organization. And she said, no, that was their own Instagram. There's no marketing. Yes, they did, and we need to meet. So I asked her, I said, how long has this Instagram been up? She said, about a year. And I said, what else have they had on there? She said, Asian hate, Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ. And I said, okay, what did the board and employees do, or staff do? And she said, they shared, they commented, they liked. So I said, so this is the only time they reacted? She said, yeah. And I said, okay, well, write this. So she writes down this email that she's going to use as a talking points with her boss. And Dina herself has told them before that she feels discriminated against. I mean, it's a lot of Zionist money in New York, 5,000 homeless young adults in New York. So I said, and push send after you knock at the door to go in, and then tell her you have this to talk about. So they do. And she said, well, the board wants to meet with you. And I mean, she was ready, she didn't care, she would leave. She said, no, this is the kids. They can meet with the kids. So she took the kids to her apartment for 2 days and trained them on how to speak, because these are kids from the streets. And she taught them how to speak slowly and nuanced and softly and respectfully, and they couldn't do anything. They couldn't do anything, and though it was all, you can get fired for anything. You just have to challenge it, and it's hard to challenge pro bono helps a lot, and we as attorneys need to work together to represent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just a quick, some notes on the firings after October 7th. We did see an increase in the number of employees, of people losing their jobs over social media posts. And it felt that this was not something spontaneous, that this was something organized, something that may have been planned. That's when we began reaching out to experts, HR experts, DEI experts, and I want to recognize Dr. Ed Hassan all the way in the back, who supported ADC. Thank you, Dr. Ed. He came in with some advice and personally, basically said, if you're hearing about, once we receive a legal case, that's the end of the assembly line. What's going on at the beginning that is allowing this to happen? And that's when I quickly learned about all the trainings these HR professionals receive, all the involvement of the ADL in their definitions, in their handbooks, and what's anti-Semitism, and the targeting, and even some employees being targeted to report their employees for something as basic as a post or wearing a keffiyeh. That's really an issue we do have to tackle. Through Ed's support, we put together a website, aaerg.org, Arab American Employee Resource Group, which gives employees the tools to tackle these issues before it's too late. Like, get it on the front end, how to get involved with the HR people, with the DEI people, so we're not seeing cases, we're not seeing discrimination on that end. So thank you, Dr. Awad, for all the work in helping us launch that. It's appreciated. And the pro bono question is important. I know, Nabih, that you've done a lot of that. And what areas are you seeing an increase of, from these things, and what could some of the lawyers up here, do to support on that?
Yeah, thank you, Abed. Yeah, I mean, I think half my practice has been pro bono to fighting for this community. I've been doing this for 25 years. We continue now to, help with other organizations, whether it be the ACLU, CARE, ADC, ACRL, other organizations. But the fact of the matter right now, what we're seeing people being let go from their employment because of statements they haven't made on social media, or exercising their First Amendment right to say, genocide is wrong, for God's sake, killing and burning children alive is wrong, and they're being, disciplined, discharged. And we're not just talking on lower level, we're talking about on high level. So even people in the media have been under attack and being discharged and what have you. But more so now what we're seeing is, again, the grave injustice that happens in this is that, again, when it becomes a norm, and the mainstream media, how they dehumanize this community, we're having a lot of individuals, Abed, that are impacted on coming into the United States on immigration matters. The other day we had a press conference about a lady, she's in a wheelchair, handicapped basically from disabled from the hip down, in a wheelchair, and she's basically coming to visit her family from Yemen, even though she's a United Kingdom citizen, British citizen, and they have a visa waiver program. They don't even need a visa to come in here as a British citizen. They held her for 3-4 hours, continue to ask her the same old questions. What are you doing here? I'm coming here to see a family. They don't like the answer. What are you doing here? What are you doing? Over and over again, they put her on a plane, violated every protocol that there is with the CBP, Customs Border Protection, deported her back to Britain without her caretaker, her sister, who is a United States citizen, and family members, without even letting them know. At least they're allowed a phone call to talk about what are they going to do, what the situation is, and whether a family member wants to go back with her. They didn't even allow her that situation. So we're dealing with the Customs Border Protection on that situation. More recently, we had an individual coming into Boston, and again, a Yemeni individual is approved for a green card, landed in the U.S. in Boston, wife, children, United States citizens. Again, the same old question, do you know this person? No, I don't know this person. He attended a funeral that supposedly was a Houthi, sympathizer. Again, he was, I don't have any involvement with that. I attended the funeral because he's my neighbor. That's the only basis. The guy died, and we attended, and they said, no, and then they showed him a picture. They said, this is you. He said, no, that's not me. They said, this is you. This is not me. This is you. Over and over, and then, again, they put him on a plane, sent him back to Yemen. We're addressing that. I mean, these kind of constant challenges are happening, Abed, in the workplace, on the borders. We've always argued and said to the State Department, you don't check your constitutional rights at the border. We know that, if they need to come into your house as United States citizens, they need a warrant. Why isn't it that they need a warrant when you fly back into the United States and you have a phone? Your cell phone basically these days holds more information than anything in your home. It has pictures, it has videos, it has documents, it has emails, text, all sorts of information. Why isn't it that they don't need a subpoena to go into your phone? So we've been working with that a lot, and with the State Department and all folks in D.C. But again, Abed, those are the overriding challenges. People are being silenced left and right in their workplace, in the media. Whether it be government folks have been shut down, they're trying to pass it with the BDS rules and what have you, that, how many, 37 states basically you can. If you want to have a contract with the state of Michigan, for instance, you have to sign a contract that you won't demonstrate or talk bad or basically stand up against Israel and its apartheid nature. It's very unfortunate. These are illegal laws that are happening without the country. And unfortunately, Anyone that tries to stand up to that, again, they put the pressure on with our legislatures. And it's not just national, it's state legislatures, you know. We've met with the national, with our senators, say, how dare you? You know, they said they promised us they will never, you know, allow this to happen, and yet they're the ones who in you know, a classic old way, you know, Israel or Zionism type methods, they want to put it in your face, and they want to make sure that you understand who's in power and who's in check. So they don't go to Colorado or Nevada or anybody to get these individuals or senators or U.S. senators to sponsor these bills. They come right here in the largest concentration in the United States of Arab Americans, and they have our senators sponsor these bills to take away our own rights. The same method and techniques that they use overseas, they're using it over here against us. It's very unfortunate, and we know we love this country. We're all probably all wanted to come to this country because we had the Bill of Rights, because we had the First Amendment, because we had due process, because we have our rights. And it's a shame to see that these individuals, our loyalties, our legislative loyalties are not to the United States. They're to a foreign country. And unfortunately, this country, as much as Palestine is occupied, this country is occupied. They were occupied, you know. And when you ask yourself, who in the room can you not speak about? That's your occupier, that's the people in power. And that's what's going on. And it's very unfortunate because we always felt, you know, America, the United States of America was the beacon of freedom and the country that basically where you could be and you can grow and humanity. And, you know, how dare we say that to the world and say, come be like us when we have lost all our faith in ethical duties and principles in humanity.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just share a short story. You know, myself and my brother Ali, we've been posting a lot on social media, and he was actually nominated to receive an award at Georgia State University, 40 under 40. And after all of these events took place, they actually received a letter from approximately 100 legal professionals, lawyers, judges that I personally know that all requested that the university rescind that award, right? And we have the names. I mean, for one, I was happy that now I know, right? I wanted to see those names, and I have them saved on my phone, and every now and then, I post it again and again to say, don't do business with these people, right? But at the time, it was pretty scary because sometimes I have hearings and trials in front of these judges, right? So, alhamdulillah, CARE Georgia came to our help and wrote a counter letter to that, and they did not rescind the award, and he was able to receive it. But I want to give you something a bit personal. So, Ali also has an event going on in November, and he has already made the announcement that all the proceeds are going to go to Gaza, right? Well, we have now been seeing a lot of posts from Zionists who all say anyone that goes to this event is anti-Semitic. Anyone who endorses Ali and his organization is anti-Semitic. So naturally, I like to go one step further, right? And so I said, Zionists are not welcome, right? After that, they screenshotted that post, right? And started sharing it and trying to publicly shame us, right? So, and these moments happen when Ali responded to me and said, bro, you may want to take it a little easier, right? And you know, this is a lot, right? And that happens to all of us. This is true, right? And I said, do you want it to help? This is my response. You just let me know. And I showed him the response to that post. And immediately he said, run it. Go for it, right? And I did. And as soon as I did that, and it was on a LinkedIn profile, I received so many likes on that response. The moral of the story here is we have to do a much better job reinforcing one another. We have to do so much better when someone takes a stance to not shy away, to support that person, to brace that person, because you know the heat is coming, right? So whenever a person has that moment of, you know, I'm not sure, remind that person, our brothers and sisters are being blown to pieces. They're being dismembered in Gaza. Go for it. And we have so much power, and everybody knows this. They're trying to silence us because they know the power that we possess. But we do have to do a better job, especially when our brothers and sisters on campuses are being arrested. Stand up with them. Show up to court. Be with them. Tell them we are with you. And the whole optics of the situation changes. You really see the bully and the victim. And that's what they're trying to discourage us from actually showing up. And I don't know how much time we have, but last point. We're talking about civil rights, right? I think that we're probably missing or overlooking something pretty important, which is our right to vote. I heard something concerning just a couple of days ago, where someone said, because of the dynamic that we are in, I'm probably not going to vote. I said, that is the worst thing you can do. That's truly a wasted vote, right? We often hear that from voting third party. Oh, that's a wasted vote because there's not enough votes. The true wasted vote is not voting, okay? And here's another thing. A very close friend of mine said, hey, what's the difference between knowing how to read and not reading and not knowing how to read? He said, there's no difference. He said, if you don't read and you know how to read, you're still at the same level as the person who doesn't read. If you don't vote, it's just the same as not having the right to vote. You must vote. You must vote. They have records of the voters. You are worth something when you vote. They have all of these on lists. They come to you. If you've even voted for Trump, they'll start bombarding you with all types of agendas and propaganda on why the other side is worse. But get on that list. You need to get on the list because you have value, and exercise that right. Thank you.
Abed, can I say something about the vote? You know, this is a very critical time. I think we have about 53 days to the vote here. And a lot of our community and a lot of the media and a lot of mainstream and a lot of individuals here in the African American community and others say, you know, how could you not vote for Harris? You know, how could you not vote? Don't you understand? A no vote for Harris is a vote for Trump. But this is very, very critical, I tell you, as Arab Americans, with the uncommitted vote and with the generation, you know, Z and the, you know, the Palestinian movement all around the country, and the Arab movement and the demonstrators out there in campus. We have to understand that if we don't choose wisely, we become irrelevant. And that is the most dangerous thing that could happen right now. We become irrelevant. Now, you don't vote for Harris, you don't vote for Trump. It's really, to me, not really that important in the sense that if I was Harris or Trump. But if you want to empower your vote, and you want to say the status quo, I'm not going to take. And I'm not going to sit there and advocate for you to vote for the other party that could possibly win, which is the Republican Party. It's like the old social media post. There's 3 Arabs standing by a coffee shop, and they're saying elections next day, and doesn't matter who really wins. They're still going to bomb our ass. You know what I'm saying? It's like one of those situations. But to us here in this time, in this day and age, if we lose, meaning that if we don't sit there and support a candidate that doesn't give a shit about our status quo right now, doesn't give a damn about our position, our flight, we become irrelevant. And I assure you, if you thought it was bad before, they're never going to listen to you. Not for a very, very long time. So think wisely. If you say, I'm going to stay out of this vote, and God bless her soul, Jill Stein or Cornel West or what have you, wonderful people, but we know they're not going to win. I'm just speaking truth to power. We know they're not going to win. We should really streak strategically in making sure that our vote is not wasted. Have the most impact that it can possibly have. And to me, that's saying if you don't want to listen to us, Democratic Party. I'm talking as an individual that's been appointed by 2 Democratic governors of the state, an individual that's been on the executive board for the Michigan Democratic Party. If you do not listen to us, let's make the impact of our vote very much count. And I think you know where I'm going with that. The more value to the vote. Staying out of it is not the answer. Make your impact voted. Make it impactful. Because I don't care, even though the next person may still come do the same thing, but at least we sent a very, very strong message in the critical state of Michigan and the swing states that you would listen to us. You must earn our right to vote. You must earn our vote. Don't sit there and take it for granted. So I want you to think very deeply and about that. We know what Trump did. We know what they did. We know what, with the executive branch. I was the attorney that brought in the lawsuit against Trump that had Arabs and Muslim Americans come back in the United States on a green card on the Muslim ban 1.0. So we have to think very strongly about that.
Thank you.
Well, is it worse than a genocide? That's what we got to ask ourselves.
So we have we do have an election strategy session after the rally.
Can I comment
go
on
ahead,
that?
then.
I'm going to be more blatant than you are. I don't want to.
Let's give time for the panelists, please, before our rally.
So I was appointed by the governor of Ohio to the board of trustees at our university. I was a Biden delegate for the state for what's his face, for Obama twice. I pulled out at the last minute the second time. I wasn't feeling Obama, okay? I'm at the convention and, well, first of all, I'm at the convention the first time and I look under my seats. This is the Democratic Party. And I see these white and blue signs. What are these? And I see Ohio, Israel. So I went to the chairman of the Democratic Party for Ohio, and I said, Chris, what are these? I don't know, I didn't put them there. Chris, you're the chairman of the committee. What are those? He said, I don't know, the folks from Cleveland, talk to them. I said, no, you are the chairman of this party. What are these? He said, well, when they call Ohio, we're going to put the signs up. I said, no, we're not. He said, Linda, I said, no, we're not. Take those signs out right now. Remove them. I said, wait a minute. Where's Italy? Where's Greece? Israel doesn't have anything to do with this. So those were removed, okay? Now, the guy that appointed me to the Board of Trustees, Governor Strickland, is the guy, and you all need to look this up on YouTube. I gave you 2 things now today, the Global Dictionary, and now this. Look this up on YouTube. Put Strickland Democratic Convention or something. This guy stands up, and this is our democracy. This is the Democratic Party. We're blaming Trump for having moved the embassy to Jerusalem. No. The Democratic Party, when Obama was elected the second time, has Strickland, the governor of Ohio, who was part of the Biden administration, I don't know, did UN stuff or something, stand up, and he was on the platform committee. Booker was the chair of the committee, but Strickland was on the committee. So they had this guy who's a Methodist minister, okay, Methodist minister, go up and invoke God and his ministry. And he asks the chairman of the Democratic Party guy, the governor of Texas or the mayor of Houston, I don't know who he was. I move that we suspend the vote, and I move that we have Jerusalem be the capital of Israel. Okay? So it goes up for a vote. The Arab Americans were amazing. And it was just not the Arab Americans, it was those that were supporting. So he said, all those in favor say yes! So then the yes had it, did their thing. All those opposed say no. The no's were louder than the yeses. And so he looks around, he doesn't know what to do, and a voice vote. So he says, oh, let's do this again. So he does that whole thing again. All those in favor say yes. They do it again. The no's again were higher. Then he goes around, he doesn't know what to do. And he said, okay. And so the woman managing this whole thing says, try it one more time. They're going to do what they're going to do. They do it again. The no's had it. And he says, the yeses have it. Platform has been changed. Jerusalem. This is a Democratic Party, okay? Look it up. So forget the Democratic Party. Forget this system and make a change. Yes, okay, you've wasted your votes. We've been saying that forever, and so the third party hasn't had a chance. Okay, the third party hasn't had a chance. Trump is going to be the worst. I mean, my immigration practice went through the roof during Trump's time. But how does change happen if we keep doing this tiptoe thing?
Go ahead, please.
I just want to, there's some concepts that have come up that I think combine really nicely this question that Abed originally asked about employment, and then we get into the election, which is how all of these panels have gone, right? There's a bizarre, Americans are weird, right? Like we accept so many very, very strange things and we just live with them as if they are a part of the natural order. You know, we talked about like this idea of we have this democracy and don't waste your vote and everything, and I agree with that, right? I'm skeptical as to whether the United States has a democracy, right? I think we have a voting system, and we elect people. I think there's some, but you know, look at the employment question. You all have jobs, right? Everybody works? You go to work every day, and you have absolutely zero control over what you do. And you're paid 1% of what your boss makes, right? You go to your job and you don't know. You have to ask to go to the bathroom. You've got to ask when you can go to lunch. You can go to lunch for 15 minutes. It's unpaid. And God forbid you have a baby. We accept this as normal. And then when you post something on your social media, you can be fired for it because you can be fired for anything regardless of the impact it will have on your life. Right? What is democratic about that? We live in that day to day, and then we're like, but we live in the greatest country in the world because you can vote for who's going to kill you. It's a truly bizarre concept, and so I challenge you, right, when you think about these things, it's not just don't waste your vote, like, question these things, right? We need to think bigger than just, you know, every 4 years this was going to happen. We need to, there has to be a fundamental change because the only way that we're ever going to truly create this world, not just, you know, achieve the sort of end of Zionism and the ability to speak about it, but a world in which once you do that, you can live. We have to connect these issues together and think about, like, they're all part of this same idea, which is that you are not in control of your life, right? You do not decide, and you do not tell them what to do. And it starts every day when you get up and you submit yourself to someone who has absolute control over your day-to-day, because if you don't, you're not going to eat. It's sick. It's a sick system. And that has to be central, I think, on what we think about. It's not just this one thing and ending the genocide, which is first and foremost, right? But then what does the world look like after this? If this is what the world comes to every 70 years or so, what world do we live in? What are the pieces of it that allow this to happen? We have to think bigger. And, you know, vote all you want, but we also, Abed and I talk about this all the time. You know, you vote and we might win. We might win. You know, what if Jill Stein is the president of the United States? I agree, it's not, I mean, I'm with you, but sorry, it's not going to happen. Maybe someday she will be, right? Then what about the Senate, right?
Abolish the Senate.
Abolish the Senate. I mean, it's crazy. You know, you can get everyone you want. You can have a house, whatever, but if some asshole in Wyoming decides that he doesn't, you know, no, what? You want to do what? You want to cut aid? You can't do it because we have such disproportionate, you know, power in these people who represent 1% of the population. So it's all well and good, right? Vote. I think voter conscious. These elections matter. I don't mean to be nihilistic, but think bigger. Think about what are the structural things we deal with every day that lead us to these situations time in and time out. We can't accept them. We can't accept them. We've got to pick people who are going to challenge them.
It's think bigger and think longer. You know, Theodor Herzl, the founder of Zionism, died in 1904, 44 years before the establishment of Israel. 44 years. So we can't expect change immediately. We can't expect change overnight. So, and we also can't expect those that are benefiting financially, right, to take money out of their children's mouths and say, oh, but we have to think about the Palestinian people. They're not going to do that. It's impossible. That is a tough sell. So that's not going to happen. So think critically about voting third party and think about uprooting the system and not just placating what some individuals say every now and then and accommodating those words, because we know that only goes so far, and if you change nothing, then nothing changes.
Thank you. Look, we are going to have an election strategy. You know, I wasn't appointed by a governor, but I was a third-party vice presidential nominee, which was a great experience and offered great insight. And I think there's something to be said about, you know, the third parties, the Green Party, and what they have to offer. I think this election, they're going to really show how appealable and how open it is with the right infrastructure and the right changes. I don't think they're too far away from having an impact on local elections, state elections, and ultimately federal elections. I think that's a possibility. We see that within the next 5 to 10 years. Given how, just think about it this way, you see so many Green Party posts about Jill Stein, about their positions. Keep in mind that's all happening organically. There's no driving paid meta ads or forces. You know, meta ads allow you can go to the meta ad library and look up who's spending the most money per day. And it'll show you the list and how much they spend. They're not even in the top 1,000, right? So while you have Democrats and Republicans really pushing their agenda through that. So if this is happening organically and you take this message that they have, you put some money and some ads and some infrastructure behind that, it's going to appeal to a lot of people. But the counter to that is what we see with the shadow banning, where even if it's going to be appealed, even if once people start liking it, that's when Meta and the forces come in to start suppressing it so you don't see it. And I think this is what we're going to get into over the next few years. I think heading into the next midterm elections, I think the Green Party, the third party, has an opportunity to really make a statement. I can get into that more at the 1 o'clock session, but I want to keep this a little focused on the legal work. I think we have time for like 1 or 2 quick questions before we break, so we have time to go outside for the rally.
This was awesome. Thank you so much. I live in Massachusetts. I'm a part of a whole bunch of different committees. Much respect to JVP. I feel like the Jewish Voices for Peace do a phenomenal job educating their members and non-members of how do you talk, how do you have the same thing. As a Palestinian and as Muslim, as an Arab, I don't feel like our community is having these same conversations. I've been learning more how to strategize regarding how do you talk about legal stuff. I do financial planning, right? So I utilize the fact of like, don't invest in different places, right? But JVP has done a phenomenal, not pointing you, Chris, but because you, like, yeah, you know what I mean. They've done a phenomenal job educating
I'm happy to be
us.
associated with JVP.
Educating us, how do we stand up for our rights and making sure that we're a part of the conversation. I am not hearing that from the Arab-Muslim conversation. So I guess the question is, how do we make sure that we're knowing the different steps to take instead of just being like, okay, well, we're going to figure it out. So that's for all of you.
And then,
I'm just, how do we know? I'm not going to answer that question directly first, but I'm going to say in every civil rights organization I've ever been involved in the last 40 or 50 years, the Jewish population was the biggest portion of that.
Yeah.
Okay? So they've had years of experience, And we're just getting there. And we're just getting there. And we can do better. And we need to do better. And JVP, I mean, I remember JVP they have their meetings every 2 years, not 2 years. And the one they had in Chicago probably, I don't know how many years ago, 6, 7 years ago or so, they invited the Palestinians for the first time to be up front. But they still weren't getting it. They were calling themselves what were they calling it? Anti-Zionism, but they still hadn't gotten it. They were shifting, but they still, so they now, my kids, one of them said, I will only go to the JVP ones. They're organized. They're not all over the place or whatever. You know what? That's who we are, and we're getting there. So yes, we need to do more. We learn from each other, but we've had a different history, and I credit JVP for, what they're doing, and we're learning from each other. JVP is learning from us. JVP was not where they were, right? So we can learn some organizational things from them, and they can learn, and they've learned from us as well.
I'll just say to add, no, I think that it is happening. I think that it's happening with the students, right? Like I learned, like JVP, when we started it at Columbia, we sort of we knew what we were doing, but the Hillel, which is what organizes the student groups, we went to them and we were like, hey, you want to recognize us? We're a Jewish student organization. And they were like, no. And Robert Kraft himself, actually, who's a donor, was like, no, kill it. And so what did we do instead? What we had to do was our friends in SJP, which was very robust at Columbia at the time, we incubated in them, right? We sort of were like a shadow organization within SJP. And they are who taught us how to speak about all of these things, right? And to speak about it these are 18-year-olds, right? But they have more knowledge of these legal concepts than most lawyers I know. And when the lesson I learned there was, one, take the lead from Palestinian voices, which is something that JVP is learning how to do. I agree. But it's slow. They're learning, while at the same time figuring out sort of the unique relationship of Jews in the United States to Zionism and the sort of twisting that it does in the community, and how to undo that internally so that Jews can rebuild after this, right? I think about that. What do you do when your community has committed a genocide? What do you do? How do you go forward? So all of that is to say that JVP has its own questions, and they organize around them, and they do a very good job. But the students of SJP, that's how I learned, right? It wasn't at a JVP conference. JVP wasn't even anti-Zionist when I started. They were still non-Zionist, and they had the vote at the first conference I went to. So I think look to the students as well, and we need to do, a better job of platforming those students to show you their strategies, because they're the ones doing it, and they have a lot to, I think, teach about how to organize. Like Palestinian Youth Movement, right? I'm in awe of them, what they've done across the country, right? So the resources are there in the community. It's a matter of, I think, going from the students and organizing outside of the student movement as well to get everybody rallied together.
Thank you. And I apologize, but we are out of time. We do have a hard stop, so we can get out. But I want to close with this. I want to acknowledge that there has been, a lot of strides made. There has been a lot of advancement and a lot of movement forward. When it comes to the legal approach and legal field in our community, I think the work of Linda and Nabih from over the past 20, 30 years, going back to the 90s, 80s type work, that's important. They laid the groundwork, and we see that now. And I'll give you, one example. When the Muslim ban was signed in by Trump, a lot of organizations were scrambling, trying to connect with, outside attorneys or other organizations outside of the community to bring these legal challenges. But Nabih, some other attorneys were filing these in their states as Arab American lawyers, attorneys from the community. Now, when the student encampment stuff happens, when a lot of stuff was happening throughout the course of the genocide, it's networks of, Arab and ally organizations, without the need of a larger, more typical organizations you would think of, bringing these lawsuits, bringing these actions. Everybody say, stand aside. We got it. We can handle this. So that's a big move forward. And Linda and Abed, they don't need to be spending, their career handling pro bono cases. They can just go home and retire, do what they want to do, but they're doing this because they care for the community. Ibrahim him and his brother don't need to be handling a lot of these pro bono cases and don't need to be speaking out. They can actually stay silent and probably increase their business, but they're refusing to do that. Chris is a phenomenal attorney. He doesn't need to be at ADC. He could be at any other organization in the country or leading a firm, you know, doing major impact litigation, but he's decided to be with us and be with us here because he truly deeply cares about the issue. This is what we're starting to see in the legal field, which we did not have as far back as 2017. And I think that's what's going to carry the legal part of us forward in the years to come. So thank you all. Thank you, the panelists, for being on. It's appreciated. And the rally is going to be outside. Visit the exhibitors, and I appreciate it. Thank you.